And that's it. We are live in the basement with Dion Baia. Welcome, Dion.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's
look,
very exciting.
look it. We have a camera. We have chairs.
We have chairs.
We have microphones.
We have lights.
I went to this handheld microphone thing because I had the setups. I got the mic stands.
Yeah.
And then the boom mic that slides over.
You want it to be more interactive for people?
Well, I've noticed all the podcasts now, where people sit around talking, they all hold it in their hands.
Stick mics?
Yeah, like the comedians do.
Yeah, it's more engaged. So it feels like they're on stage.
I think comedians are very comfortable holding a mic.
Yeah, so they know when not to talk. Yeah, I should.
Yep.
Yeah.
So anyway, and because I thought it looked rather sloppy for you to be holding, we're on a podcast, but we're holding microphones,
But it's gives you something to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
for the nerves,
Yeah. Although you're an audio guy.
I am.
Let's do the intro here where you, what's, your story, because we are going to, this is the title of today's podcast. Ready? Here we go. 3 essential classic films.
Ooh. Classics or any films?
Well, I say classic instead of, essentially it's 3 old movies.
Yeah.
And what I thought we would do, because we like to talk about old movies. You love watching old films. You have a pretty good encyclopedia. Your knowledge base of old movies is pretty good. So I thought there's a lot of people out there who aren't into old movies. They don't go automatically
crying shame
to old movies.
Yeah.
So Turner Classic Movies comes on, they're like, oh, look at that, an old movie, and then they walk away.
Yeah. Black and white.
Yeah.
Poppycock.
Yes. So, but I'm very, if I see an old movie that I've seen before, I say, oh, I want to watch this again. And if I see one I haven't seen, I said, oh, I gotta.
Well, you're an old soul like me, so I feel like we were born into that, and I grew up with that. So yes, it's very engaging for me. I actually get very stimulated to see coming up next a film noir or whatever, and I haven't seen that, and you watch enough of them, you start to see a lot of the actors are like old friends. So you see a lot of these character actors like, oh, look, he's in this or she's in this. So it makes you want to watch. And there's so much of an output of those movies back then. Yeah. There's always something you haven't seen.
And so let's start with your biography. Now, why are you, first of all, the regular biography, you do sound at Fox News, but what's your job title? Sound guy?
A2. That's what they call it.
A2.
So, yeah, I'm an audio guy. There's an A1. The A1 is the guy who's behind the board, mixing the show, pulling the faders up and down, and then I'm kind of the representative on set. I'm the A2, and I'm the person who mics the guests and the anchors when they come into the studio.
So there's in the control room, there's an A1 guy?
Yeah, there's a guy who's in the control room who, like, when the director says, like, track the mic, he puts it's almost like the old days, the board engineer for like an album.
Yep.
He's behind a big old music audio console, and he's got everybody's mics on a fader, and he'll bring it up, bring it down. If they're talking, they start swearing, he can bring it down, or he can cut this or that. Or if you want to, hear let's listen to the tape, he'll track the tape and he'll pull it down. And then me in the studio, I'm the guy who's putting the mics on people. I'm setting them up.
Yep.
We have hardline microphones, which is like this, means a wire goes directly into the device, or we have wireless, which about, which will go on somebody's back.
Yep.
With batteries and stuff like that. So that's my day job. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you do, if they sent you, Dion, we need you get in the studio, you got to be A2 for the afternoon. Could you do it?
Yeah.
You could.
You mean you mean to
A1?
Oh, A1. Yeah, I've done it a little bit. Yeah, sometimes I know my way around it. It's like can you drive stick? It's like, yeah, I think I could,
Yeah.
If you're not, if you're used to driving automatic, I know the principle. I've done it a couple times. It's
now while I'm thinking of this question, because it's fresh in my head, because you said they have the fader and are they always riding those the levels? Because for instance, when I do America's Newsroom, you got Bill and Dana are there, they're the anchors. We come in, we got the lavaliers on us. They also have lavalier microphones,
which are wireless microphones, the ones that go on to the lavaliers, lavs.
So, Bill will say, hey, let's we got so and so, out there in California or down at the border. Let's go live. They go to the border. And then the reporter's talking on the border. And then Bill and Dana are chatting in the studio.
Yeah, usually we're getting into the minutia, but usually, so if you go to a remote shot of somebody on the border, they'll kill the mics in the studio.
Yeah.
You know,
so
if
with
it's
a kill switch, or they Boom.
they track them down. So it's like if it's a straight hit, as they call it in the business, where the guy's just going to say, yeah, we're here, and he'll give like a 3 or 4 minute what's going on. This is an update of what's going on. They'll kill the mics, and at that point, you know, the host can talk to the producer. Where are we going next?
Yeah.
What do you want me to do? I didn't like that, whatever. Or they may keep the mic open if it's going to be a Q&A. If Tom's hosting and Tom may be asking me questions down at the border, then we'll keep the mic tracked, which is mean keep it hot, keep it open
for the whole segment,
for that little segment of what's going on, or maybe at the end of the segment. So I may give a read that they know already with video hits. They're talking about, you know, we saw some people coming across the border last night, and they'll cut the video of what we saw last night. So there's almost the format that the director and the control room will go through. And then near the end of that segment, when they realize the script is ending, they may open the mic, and we'll tell you your mic is open or your mic is hot. And then Tom can be like, thanks, Dion. By the way, what the hell's going on down there? What's going on? And then we'll have a little back and forth and goodbye. And then if you were a guest sitting in that the whole time in there, your mic is usually killed until you're introed.
Yeah.
And then once you're introed, that person behind the board will track the microphone, and then your mic is hot. And if you're wearing an earpiece, you know, by that, you can hear yourself in the earpiece. You'll know when your mic is tracked.
Right.
Because you'll hear yourself. And that's, you know, some people don't realize that. Why am I hearing myself? It's so that it's kind of like a fail safe. You know, your mic is open if you can hear yourself.
Yeah. So if you start talking and you hear it in your ear, you're like, oh, I'm on.
Yeah. It's live. It's hot. I can't say
That's
anything. I
interesting.
shouldn't. Yeah.
Because I was never in a position, like when I was hosting Red Eye, I wouldn't hear them say you're hot, you're not hot. They would never check in with me. They just kind of did it themselves, right?
Yeah.
But if we cut to video, they would bring the mics down.
Yeah, you could say something to somebody like, what do you want me to do? What do you know?
But
I would yelling at somebody, come on.
Yeah. But I would say sometimes, like, I liked having, you know, say it was a video of, you know, you're showing funny videos during Red Eye.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted to have the panels like
react to it.
Yeah. So I would say, can you keep that audio up?
Keep the mics open.
And they would say, yeah, but then the audio guy, I think sometimes he would, you know, if there was people chatting during the video, he would bring it down and then bring it up.
Yeah, because I guess you'd have to tell the panelists, listen, we're going to keep your mics open during that. So don't say anything you don't want, you know, so that, there's a delicate balance there of if they're going to be asking, are we going to talk about what I asked? You don't want that, you know, as opposed to like, oh, look at that funny cat video. Yeah. So a little pre-planning, I guess, would help. Yeah. In certain situations. But that's the day job. And then I'll go on remote. It's a very busy election season that we're in now. So the conventions are coming up. So we'll go to different cities and set up, you know, and do like, remote stuff like that, where, you know, they'll bring the whole team over to Milwaukee for the RNC in the summer, and the DNC's in Chicago. So we'll be going to those. And then
you're there all day. So like Fox and Friends will be there, and then Dana will be there. You know, all the shows are there.
Yeah. Big ones like that, big events like the RNC or the DNC, the whole footprint is there all day, you know, all the programming, because everybody wants to be there on location. And it almost becomes like a, you know, like who's most popular. I want to be there too. I want my show to be there too. So people, the 5 will be there, or Hannity will be there live. All the big shows, prime time will be there. So, you know, you could start at, I don't know what time, 4 or 5 in the morning with Fox and Friends, and you could be on until 11, 12 at night, depending on like the time zone versus what's happening live.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's grueling.
You know, well, I mean, you got to be there, and you got to be like, for instance, for Fox and Friends, when does it start? Is the official 6 a.m.?
I think so.
So what time do you have to get there? Probably an hour before.
Usually I don't do that shift, but an hour, 2 hours before, because whatever show starts live, you got to be there at least an hour before to set up. To put batteries in the microphones, to we call it faxing out, turn everything on, and talk to so we can make sure we're hearing everything. So the A2 will talk into the microphone, the A1 will hear it, make sure, I can hear the microphone's okay. There's no problems. There's no crackling. There's nothing, because you don't want. If you don't check all that stuff beforehand in pre-pro, as we call it, if we go live and then something's wrong, the microphone's crackling, making noises, it's very noticeable on TV, and you don't want that. It's a big no-no.
I can't believe there's not more mistakes.
Oh, like there's tons of them.
There is?
Yeah, but you just don't realize, you know, a lot of times we're in there quick, or we get it changed, or something's wrong, or mic's not on, or somebody takes the mic off, or they're in their own world. You can't believe we have people come in like Columbo. I used to say that about like Dr. Michael Bodden. Great guy. Love him. Wealth of information, but he can tell you who killed Cleopatra, but he can't find his way out of a studio. You know, he just walk around and be like, you know, wow, whoa, you know, and it's just like, Dr. Bodden, we got to put a mic. Okay. You know, it's just very Columbo. Yeah. It's very funny.
Okay. So that's your bio. And then let's do a quick bio about why you know about old movies. Like, I feel like my age, and I was born in 66, so I'm older than you, but our generation that grew up on TV, we were fed old movies as part of our feed. Our feed back then was dictated by the networks. You know, nowadays your feed is dictated by social media. We were fed Creature Double Feature. You know, that was a TV 38 in Boston, the UHF station.
Sure. The Movie Loft.
Yeah, the Movie Loft.
I'm 1979. I was born, and then I grew up in New Haven, so I was on the cusp of. We got Boston to the north of us, and then we got New York WPIX.
Oh yeah.
So we were right in the middle. So sometimes they'd have the hockey games, and they would be blacked out.
Right.
You know, if the Bruins were playing or somebody, because back then I forget what it was, but you could.
But so you saw TV 38 and 56.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Movie Loft and all that.
Movie Loft, was he 38?
Yeah, I think it was
Dana
38.
Hersey.
It was like channel 24 for us on the box, the little Gerard. People remember the ka-chung, ka-chung, ka-chung. There's a little piano that was like hard line to your TV, and then you'd have a little, or it was on top of the TV.
Yeah.
It was ka-chung, ka-chung. And I have a podcast on the side, Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers, and this is what we talk about. It's weird for our generation. We had a collective childhood because we all kind of were captivated in front of the TV that whatever was playing. And you think about nowadays, one of the the best shows on Fox may get 4 or 5 million, if that. Carson was getting like 29 million people because there was only like 4 or 5 channels and then some UHF. So you just think about the captive audience sitting there watching, and I feel like people were more knowledgeable culturally about pop culture because even if you didn't like who Jackie Gleason was, say, you knew who he was.
Yeah.
There was a frame of reference there. Where nowadays, since there's so much diversity of what people can do for their entertainment, everyone has their head down like their own rabbit hole. So kids, they go on YouTube, or they don't, they do this. People don't even put on the TV or watch television. It's really just sad.
Yes. I mean,
I find it very just upsetting.
It is amazing culturally, because, like I said, we had the TV, so we would see old repeats of things like, of course, Our Gang. So we would watch the Our Gang and, Little Rascals.
Sunday mornings that used to come out for me.
Yeah. And then I never loved, the horror movies, like the Creature Double Feature. My friends were really into that. I never loved like that kind of B horror movie thing. I know a lot of people love that kind of stuff. I also never was really into the Three Stooges, and my friends were passionate about the Three Stooges, but I did love Little Rascals, and I loved
Abbott and Costello.
Abbott and Costello. I preferred, and Laurel and Hardy. That was harder to see. But
and Amos and Andy was on back then for me too. Sunday mornings, I get up. My dad, I'm Italian. He would start the pasta sauce in the morning, and I have vivid memories of watching like Thunderbirds very early in the morning. People who may not even know Thunderbirds or Go. Our Gang would be on, maybe Amos and Andy, and then we'd have like you're saying, maybe either Abbott and Costello or like a Three Stooges or something.
That's amazing that Amos and Andy got you because you were born in 79.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So I mean, I don't think it was on very long, but I knew enough about it because then when I went to going to the library back then, which I don't know if anybody does nowadays, I would go into the media section and I was like, oh, what are these things on record or tape?
Yeah.
And that's how I got into the old radio shows. I'm a huge radio show guy, like Suspense, Out of Limits, Amos and Andy, Jack Benny. That's a whole different art. That's for another conversation. The theater of the mind that I think is dead.
The radio. Yeah.
My wife and I both love that, and nothing we love more than going on long car trips and just listening to like an episode of Dragnet or something. Amos and Andy, not Amos, Jackie Gleason, or no, I'm sorry, Jack Benny or Burns and Allen or something, and just thinking of it. It's so amazing. People don't realize, when you close your eyes and imagine everything.
It's amazing. Just because I'm thinking of this now, the old time radio.
Yeah.
I used to listen to the cassette tapes, in the 70s and 80s. We would trade them, and it was a lot of like the Sherlock Holmes and things like that, right?
And BBC kept doing them. BBC still has, to this day, I think they still do Doctor Who.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So there is, my wife who's English. She tells me there is a soap that's been on since like the 50s or 60s, and I don't remember the name of it, that they still do live on radio.
Yeah,
which I think is amazing to keep it going.
Yeah. And so I wanted my kids to listen to old time radio, so I looked stuff up on the internet, and you can find them.
Archive.org for people who don't know. OTR, old time radio.
Yeah.
Archive.org. They have a lot of stuff remastered for free because it's all like public domain. Or if you go to YouTube now, you can find everything uploaded, like Suspense. And these are shows, if you have like we're talking old movies, if you have a favorite old movie star or whatever, this was back in the day, hand in hand. You'd be out promoting your movie, you do an episode of whatever show to promote it, and you may get, like, say, the Maltese Falcon starring Humphrey Bogart. they may do a version on radio, an hour version with like Edward G. Robinson as
Oh.
Sam Spade. You know what I mean? So they would have a truncated version. And that's really the essence of storytelling. If you have to condense an hour and a half, 2 hour movie down to like a half hour or an hour,
Yeah.
you know, and all bare bones, then you sometimes have the original cast. You'll have Sidney Greenstreet or Peter Lorre in there. And so I wholeheartedly tell people, go check out Old Time Radio, because it's absolutely amazing. And people just forget about it these days.
Yeah. And you need to, you know what I would just recommend? Old Time Radio, if you're in the car.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're in the car, especially if you're alone in the car, because then you're captive and you're not going to like get,
if you're listening to some old Lights Out, Suspense, Inner Sanctum, some of those old scary. I mean, some people will think they're campy, and I was a big Bill Cosby fan growing up, so he would do sometimes like the Chicken Heart, and he would make fun of some of the shows for being campy. But some of those shows are terrifying, you know. And to this day, there's a lot of shows, episodes that are still hold up that are very, very scary.
So I find on the internet some old time, and so I start playing them at night for bedtime.
Yeah.
You know, for the kids. This was back when we lived in Riverdale. The kids are in their bunk beds, and I put on the Old Time Radio, and it's you know, it's an old Western, but a mystery. Somebody got murdered on the trail, and you know, get off your horse, and you know, they're all and
all the sound effects. Yeah, you're there. Yeah. It's great.
And so then at the end, they were like, and the Lone Ranger was played by Paul Hecht. I know Paul Hecht. Like when I was in the 90s, when I'm running around in my early career, I get involved in voiceovers and commercials, and there's the old guys out there doing voiceovers.
Still, yeah.
Right. Bob Caliban and Paul Hecht were a couple of old guys who I started with, and they were like and everyone used to talk about them. Oh, they've been everywhere. They've seen everything. They've done everything. Bob Caliban and Paul Hecht. So I'm listening to Old Time Radio, and it says, and as the Lone Ranger, Paul Hecht, and you know, as as his wacky sidekick, Bob Caliban. And I'm telling my kids, I said, I know these
them.
guys.
Yeah.
And they've both passed away now, but they were like they were the old guard when I was coming in.
That's so weird to think of, you know, when you're able to meet that kind of on the cusp and have a connection to that era.
Yeah.
And think about, and that's, I don't know, I guess once we get to that age, we'll realize it for people who are older, that just all that knowledge and all that experience that they had back then, that was a grind. You read about Mel Blanc, you know, people know Mel Blanc a lot now for Looney Tunes, but he was doing so much voiceover work on Jack Benny or whatever. And he would have to run from studio to studio.
Yeah.
He had it like, you know, they would have a usher holding a door open. He would run out of one studio, go through, get in a cab, drive across town. They'd have somebody else waiting for him. He'd get there in time, and he'd be doing, "Hey, Mr. Benny," and he would be doing a voice, you know. And that was people like him or Joseph Kearns, who I love, who's the people will know Dennis the Menace. He's Mr. Wilson with the glasses.
Yeah, he's
another guy who's everywhere back then. You start to hear these different voice actors, or you know, people, especially people who had leading roles as like you said, Zorro or Lone Ranger or Gunsmoke. And a lot of these shows then transitioned when TV became popular. They were like, screw it, we'll put it on TV. We'll turn it into what, you know, we need content.
Yeah.
So they would turn, Jack Benny said one of the hardest things was, you know, going from radio to TV, because then you'd have to show all the gags as opposed to just implying them. So a lot of times it was harder for having him walk home, and then the guys like stick him up.
Yeah.
You have to show all that. So,
right.
You know, so it's a lot harder to get the joke to be a sight gag as opposed to visual with the audience laughing at the back, you know, at the recording.
Yeah.
So how are this is great. So how are your children, the kids liking it? Or how did they like it?
They loved the Old Time Radio. And this is part of the reason why I decided to do this show, 3 Essential Classic Films, because my kids love old movies, and I kind of forced.
But that's because of you.
Yes,
you know,
but I forced it upon them, and so some of their favorites are The Great Escape.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, love that movie, and they've seen it several times. They love the North by Northwest.
And how old are your children?
Now they're 18 and almost 18 and almost 15.
And then what year were they when you were exposing them to that?
I mean, since they were very small. So basically started with like Old Time Radio during bedtimes stories, you know, and then, you know, when they were little, we would watch musicals, you know,
yeah.
And of course, just all the classic kids films, like the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and things like that. And then I would throw in, because, you know, it's all classic films to them. Right?
Yeah.
And then I would throw in some of the old timey movies. And then when they got to be a certain age, they were ready to watch North by Northwest. They loved it.
Yeah.
But then
that's hard because a lot of them, that's why I asked, because like those North by Northwest is a little convoluted, and so is Great Escape's a long movie. So
yeah,
if it's holding their attention spans, you're doing something right.
Yes, yeah, and they were pretty good because they wouldn't watch any of that kind of children's program. We would watch the Waltons together, you know, and they loved the Waltons, you know, and they loved Little House on the Prairie. So it's like slow.
I watch that now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But there's no short attention span in that. It's very good long form storytelling. But then I said, oh, you're going to love this. Put in the Philadelphia Story, which was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And they didn't love it. There's too much talking. But they love Cary Grant. And I said, this is Cary Grant. He was in, you know, North by North. It's just too much yapping for them, you know? And then there was another one, His Gal Friday. I thought, oh, they're going to love that.
Yeah,
Guys in the desk and like slam out the way. Yeah. They didn't love that.
Because too much back and forth.
Just too much of the
quipping.
Yeah. They love visual films like they loved Rear Window.
Fantastic. Again, Hitchcock. Yeah.
So they love the you know, it's not that they can't watch black and white movies because they liked Casablanca. They didn't love
like that Technicolor,
Citizen Kane,
like CinemaScope. They're like, we like the shot composition and the depth of photography.
Yeah,
they like what Hitch is doing for us.
Yeah, I mean, but it was something about I love screwball comedies and I love the back and forth with the dialogue.
Yeah,
they don't love that dialogue. They would rather, they want to be, although tell you the truth, they loved Holiday with Cary Grant.
Yeah.
But it's just, I guess it's certain, there's certain things that they weren't latching onto. And I thought, okay, so they're like, you know, because they've had a pretty good library shown to them. To me, they're like the typical person that's not drawn to old movies. They have to be forced upon them. So for this thing, I thought, because you and I talk about, you know, what was that film with Robert Mitchum you recommended recently?
Night of the Hunter.
No, the Christmas one.
Is it not Remember the Night? It is Holiday.
It's where he works in the store.
Yeah, with Janet Leigh. It's Remember the Nights with Barbara Stanwyck and Fred McMurray. It is Holiday Affair.
Holiday Fair, yeah. It's, you know, it's
a card catalog,
but he works in a store, and there's like, it's like a crazy.
He's a floor walk. She's a floor walker in this department store.
Yeah,
and it's short too. It's only like 89 or 85 minutes.
But so that's the kind of movie you and I want to watch. But I'm not gonna, like, you know, I actually did get my wife to watch it, and she enjoyed it. But if you say Holiday Affair to people, they're going to be like, I can't sit through that.
And they will have no clue. That's the sad thing. I mean, nowadays they may know Casablanca, but they're not going to know any of the B-sides.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really sad. I mean, but I guess that's with anything. As you get more removed from stuff, I mean, you think of 100 years ago, how, like, you know, people like Rudolph Valentino, or people who were huge, Fatty Arbuckle. And then now, you know, people don't even know who the heck those people are. So, you know, Lon Chaney Sr. So it's just like, I don't know if it's with the passage of time and, you know, 100 years ago, people knew who the stage actors were. The gentleman who pioneered Sherlock Holmes on stage, who gave him like the look that everyone copied into the.
Well, movies. They were the celebrities back then.
Yeah,
like the Booth family.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Some people never even saw them, but they knew the Booths were. Oh, if the Booth is in town, we've got to see that.
Yeah.
Till that whole murder happened.
Yeah,
and then,
that whole American, my American cousin.
But so then I thought, so there's a lot of people that, you know, my people on locals and things like that. I thought some of them, they don't watch old movies ever. So let's do 3 essential classic films, and we'll do one at a time.
Okay.
So for people who don't watch old movies, you got to like watch these, and it's like 2 things. They're classics. You're going to enjoy them, but also it's, we believe, Dion and I believe these are good entry level for the modern palate, entry level movies that are going to get you hooked on old movies, right?
Yeah.
So you have a good foundation to start with.
And to answer what you said, so I grew up on old television like you, movies, and then I went to film school, and then I got the day job at Fox, and then on the side I sometimes act. I've written a couple screenplays that have been turned into books. So I've tried to have Fox be the day job and then still do my passion, which is movies.
And you got the book about it's a novel that takes place in New Haven.
Yeah, Blood in the Streets, which is basically a 70s cop movie. And then I have a second one Moore's PI, which is basically a Harlem 40s private detective. It's like Maltese Falcon meets like Chinatown or
Oh yeah.
Dick Tracy kind of a thing. But so yeah, so I grew up watching television and movies, and I still do that, and that's where my comfort level.
Let's get to your now. Casablanca is not on my list only because it's so overwhelmingly like, of course it's going to be on your list. So I said, let me do one without Casablanca. But really, let's say it's Casablanca Understood, right? I don't know if you were going to use that in your top 3, but Casablanca Understood. You have to see Casablanca.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Everybody's in that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a huge Peter Lorre fan. I'll watch anything with Peter Lorre. Everybody's in Sidney Greenstreet. Didn't start acting until he was like 50.
Oh, really?
It's like
that makes sense.
That,
but it's
people still
great.
Call that as the perfect movie,
classic. Yeah. And it almost is perfect. I mean, in that it's not going to blow you away though. For people if you're an adult and you've never seen Casablanca, you obviously need a little remedial schooling in old movies. But I think like I told my kids before watching it, it's not going to tear your socks off. Like it's a very mellow movie. Like it's classic. Almost every frame is incredible. The
shot compositions. And everything.
But it's not going to take your breath away.
Yeah.
Maybe at some point after you watch it like the 5th time, you're like, wow, this movie is really perfect. Like it's like there's nothing wrong with it. Like there's no wasted energy anywhere in this movie.
There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes going on with Claude Rains, my man Conrad Veidt.
Oh yeah,
who I love, and it's just I think it's the whole journey from a bogey going through this, the sadness, and then the getting the girl, losing the girl again. It's all
classic.
Yeah.
It's true. It's a true classic. So I'm going to leave that off my list. Let me let you go first with your number 3.
I guess I would say White Heat from 1949.
White Heat.
James Cagney.
That's top of the world, Ma, right?
Yeah. Made it Ma top of the world. It's him, and it's Edmund O'Brien's in it as well. Virginia Mayo, maybe Raoul Welch directed it, and it's basically, people will call that, aside from like Peter Lorre's M, it's like the first psychopath. People seeing psychopath pathology in a movie, and he's just a crazy man. Cody Jarrett he plays, and he's unhinged. He has a mother complex. He has these migraines that come on, and his mother has to soothe him. It's a great story. He's fantastic in it. At the time, Cagney, he was doing everything under the sun, but he was known for gangster movies, but he would do musicals and stuff. And then he kind of stopped offering me gangster movies. I don't want to do gangster movies anymore. And he tried to do his own thing. And in the 40s, he was wealthy enough to try to do his own movies, and he wasn't really able to be as successful as he was with the studio system. So Warner Brothers kind of lulled him back, and that was the movie he did when he came.
White Heat was bringing him back.
Yeah, and then that's why it was so like the.
And he didn't consider that a gangster movie.
No, because he liked the script, and it was elevated enough where it wasn't just, there was more going on. It wasn't just the shoot 'em up, gangster mall and this or that you see with Angel with Dirty Faces or Public Enemy, great movies.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge Cagney fan. And I love a lot of his movies, but White Heat's always stuck with me because of his performance. The soundtrack is phenomenal. Pacing is great. It's a great movie. It still holds up. And the acting prowess is amazing in it. Great one-liners, as we said, made him on top of the world. I think if people are Madonna fans, there's a Madonna album, maybe her first album, and I think she does a song called Jimmy Jimmy. She takes cuts from it, and it's in it. And then people who,
I don't think there's any Madonna fans.
People who may know, there's a Tupac movie called Juice, and the same year a Denzel Washington movie called Ricochet with John Lithgow.
Yeah,
they're both watching White Heat in it, and it becomes plot points in the movies where they watch the White Heat, and then they do it. It turns the plot of those movies around. So I don't know why at the same year, like 91, both Juice and Ricochet had White Heat in it. But if people know those movies, they'll know the reference.
I think there's my favorite thing in White Heat that I remember. It's comic. It wasn't comical at the time, I don't think, but when you watch it now, somebody gets burned with the steam, right? Like one of the guys, he gets the steam in the face, and he's catastrophically burned. And then Jimmy Cagney is so mean, he's just going to leave him there to die, right? So he's laying there, and he's wrapped up like a mummy, and he's like, to hell with him, and they leave, right? And then the fellow gangster comes back in a moment of compassion and puts a cigarette in the guy's mouth.
Yeah, because Cagney says to him as they're leaving, "Here, go take care of him. We don't want to leave any witnesses."
Oh, okay,
so his friend has to go back in, so the friend shoots into the. Then he's
Right.
like, here, you know, I'll send you help when I can. He's like, thanks, Vic. Because at the beginning of there's a train robbery at the beginning, which is, you know, kind of out of style at the time, but that's why they pull it off. And when they shoot one of the locomotive men, he falls and he lets the steam. And then that's why one of the guys standing by the locomotive gets scolded.
Yeah.
And so they don't know what to do with this guy at the beginning of the movie. They're holed up and like, there's a big storm coming. And that's the big thing about who you've been listening to the radio, and he punches the guy out and he goes, I told you not to listen to that radio. If that battery's dead, it'll have company. But they know because the guy was listening to the radio that there's a storm coming and they can make their escape, because who would be on the roads during a snowstorm?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a good movie. And then his mother's there, and it's really, you got kind of like the edible complex there with his mom, and his mom's the only one who can soothe him. And, you know, because he gets these crazy migraines, and a lot of psychology majors talk about the psychosis of what's going on when he has these migraines come on. And
yeah, it was the beginning of, there was a lot of fascination with psychology then.
Yeah, it's in the 50s. You get that with the, you know, back prior to World War II, you had like the Westerns are very simplistic. The bad guy is in the black hat, the good guy's in the white hat. And then after that, in the 50s, you get the Anthony Mann, Jimmy Stewart films. And those are the psychological Westerns that you get where it's more muddied. You know, you start to bring in the different pathologies and stuff with like Winchester 73 or all these, the Bend of the River and all that stuff. And that defines the Westerns of the 50s, where it gets more about character studies. And then Sergio Leone in the 60s makes it dirty and kind of revitalizes it, because they're kind of running out of steam at that point.
Yeah, that's why when they did The Unforgiven, everybody was acting as if Clint Eastwood like invented this new genre. Oh, it's the anti-Western, and they were all, that was like part of the, and I'm like, wait a minute, all the Westerns I remember were anti-Western.
Yeah,
you know
they
what I
were
mean?
all very
that was a whole movement.
Deconstructing, they almost called it. Yeah. The system or the model.
Yeah.
So so that's White Heat 1949. Go check it out. What's yours?
Okay. Double Indemnity.
Oh,
Double Indemnity, because I'm thinking like, okay, you got to do the and I'm not going to use Casablanca as my intro one, so I got to think Double Indemnity.
But you did it as an honorable reference, like you honorable mention, because it's such a good movie.
But why Double Indemnity? Again, it's kind of perfect. Like it's very, you know, there's no wasted space in it. It looks incredible because it's got that film noir.
Written by Raymond Chandler.
I didn't know that.
He wrote the script. I don't think he wrote the book, but I think he adapted the script.
And I didn't even realize, because I said I better look up the director. I didn't realize it was Billy Wilder.
Yeah,
it's the director who is the comedy. He's the great comedy director, and I just didn't think of him as.
He also did Sunset Boulevard. Is that Billy Wilder too? Maybe.
I probably is.
And what's her name?
Probably is. And that's
Gloria
the one.
Swanson?
So there you go. A lot of people would say, well, yeah, Sunset Boulevard, go right for that. The thing is, Sunset Boulevard, it's got the narration, it's film noir, it's got the, you know, my close up, you know.
Yeah.
But Double Indemnity is a better movie.
Yeah.
Hands down. Like, I get it. Like, Hollywood loves movies about Hollywood.
Yeah.
So there's like All About Eve and Sunset Boulevard are considered the greatest movies of all time.
And they're both very much, you realize with these themes, it's an old movie, but you could take that story today. Yeah. And it's very much a modern, a lot of these. That's why I like watching the old TV shows, because you watch a show from 50 years ago and the topic for the episode is, you could just transpose that into a modern episode. They're timeless stories.
Yeah.
But people aging out, that's Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset Boulevard. I mean, people aging out and they don't, you know, and they don't know what they're going to do. And the people like, you know, they're sitting in there reliving their past in their living room, watching their old movies, and they don't realize that time has left them by or passed them by and stuff.
Well, there's a Columbo with Janet Leigh.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And
she's so sad at the end of that.
Thing.
Yeah.
No,
don't get me into Columbo. I could do a whole podcast on how amazing Columbo is. But it's Double Indemnity.
Double Indemnity.
What's his face? Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck.
Yeah, and Edward G. Robinson.
Oh, Edward G. Walter Keyes.
Yeah, but it's film noir, right?
Yeah.
So it's gonna get that storytelling is like automatic. Okay. It's going to suck you in. It's not a long movie. None of those film noirs are. They kind of come and go very, you know, they move right along. Barbara Stanwyck's unbelievable in it. And she's irresistible as well.
Mr. Neff.
Yeah. So you can understand why his how he gets into trouble with her.
He's an insurance adjuster.
Yeah.
And he goes over to meet her husband to get a new policy about something. And she's there to greet him. And then she kind of lures him in, and he wouldn't be a guy that's usually lured, but because she's who she is, she kind of grabs him. And then Edward G. Robinson is Fred McMurray's boss at the insurance agency, and he realizes something's afoot or afoul, because within minutes or within not too long, Fred McMurray's gone head over heels for Barbara Stanwyck, and he agrees to she coerces him into trying to kill her husband, which is like, what you would not normally.
Yeah.
And he's so head over heels for her. He's like, yes, we'll do this. And then they do it. And then Edward G. Robinson's the one who's like, wait, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
And then it becomes this cat and mouse game of, can they get away with it? Is Barbara Stanwyck really, is she using him, or is she not? Is she in love with him? As she said, it's fantastic.
And what's great about it is that it's insurance guys, like typically boring guys.
Yeah.
You know, they are boring guys in the world, right? But once this thing happens, they become very interesting guys. So now Edward G. Robinson he's not a police detective, but he acts like one.
Yeah.
Because he's got to adjust the insurance.
Yeah. He says that there's a monologue where he's like, we have books over there and everything in the world. There's heart attacks. There's all different statistics on suicides. Blah, blah, blah. That. Then he's like, because they killed him by him falling off a train as the husband dies accidentally.
Because that's going to get the double indemnity.
Yeah. Because that's the double indemnity on the insurance. And Edward G. Robinson's like, nobody kills themselves or falls off a train. And he's like, I got something, a pain inside of my hand, and it's something there, and it's not right, and that's giving Fred McMurray more. And I love how these movies start too, because it's like same thing with Sunset Boulevard. It's like it starts at the end. Yeah. So Fred McMurray walks in with a bullet in his gut, and he gets a recorder out, and he's like, I'm going to tell you the story, what happened. And then it goes flashback. Yeah. And then so it's like, and that was kind of, I would guess that wasn't new at the time, but it really sucks you in. It
did. I mean, Citizen Kane, same technique.
Yeah, Rosebud,
right?
He dies. Yeah,
and done in flashback.
Yeah, Xanadu.
Yeah, but the Christopher Nolan has taken that to a whole new level.
Or
now.
Even Quentin Tarantino with the doing. People thought that was so brand new with Pulp Fiction. It's like, have you not seen Stanley Kubrick's The Killing, which I love? It's which is a heist movie, but it's told all different backwards, fronts, and side. But these movies are fantastic, and it's just it's hard now because a lot of people, modern audiences, can't watch this and not realize that some of this stuff seems cliched. Like if you watch Dirty Harry and you're like, we're giving you a new partner, it's like, oh, I've seen this a million times. It's like, well, Dirty Harry started that convention. Yeah. So it's like something like Double Indemnity. This was brand new at the time when you see these conventions being laid.
Yeah. So okay, you're number 2.
It's something I let slip out before by accident. Robert Mitchum, Night of the Hunter.
Oh, Night of the Hunter. Yeah, okay.
Charles Lawton. Charles Lawton was an actor who was very renowned. He only directed one movie, 1955, Night of the Hunter, and
Charles Lawton directed it.
Yeah. Huh? And then it got terrible reviews, and it really destroyed his peace of mind, and he died a few years later.
Why did it get terrible reviews?
Because people just didn't understand it. People just thought it was too weird, and then now it's become a cult classic, and people have gone on to see the visuals and the storytelling, that it's kind of a fairy tale told from a child's perspective, and it's about Robert Mitchum is a preacher who in the Depression South has love and hate on his hands, which people will see in a lot of Simpsons and Sideshow Bob and all that. Yeah. And he believes God is giving him widows that he can go kill, take their money, and go from widow to widow to preach the word of the Lord. And he talks to God, and he believes God is giving him these women. And left hand is hate, right hand is love. And he's got a switchblade, and he hates women. He hates the perfume and smelling things. He really has this pathology of hate. And he comes across Shelley Winters, who has husband Peter Graves, robbed the bank in the Depression era South, died, hid the money, and was executed. And he finds out there's money hid someplace, and the kids know where the money's hid. Yeah. So he marries Shelley Winters, and he's trying to get out of the kids where the money's hid. And it turns into this. Lillian Gish is in it too, and it's this beautifully photographed movie. And it's the soundtrack is amazing too, the music in it. But there's certain scenes in it where it's just Lawton shoots it. It looks like when you're in the midst of it, you don't realize, but it almost looks like you're looking up at a play, where you see the set and you'll see the bounds of the set, and then there's black around. It's like almost you're looking up at a set on stage. And you don't realize, like, oh my gosh, he's putting the camera so far back, you can see the outline of the house or the basement. And it's like, it's beautifully well done. Robert Mitchum's absolutely amazing in it. And again, it's one of these movies where I think Mitchum only played a bad guy twice in his life, a psychotic, and it's him as Max Cady in Cape Fear. Yeah. And it's him as Harry Powell in Night of the Hunter.
Great. That's a great selection. Okay. I'm going to go to my number 2. I got to put a Hitchcock in here And
I
would
thinking
say,
Hitch too.
yeah, and a lot of people, like I said, my kids love the North by Northwest. A lot of people go for Rear Window, Vertigo, things like that in the late era. I call it the late era Hitchcock. But there's so many good earlier Hitchcocks.
Should I try to guess what you're going to say?
Yes.
Strangers on a Train?
No,
Oh,
no.
okay.
But I do love all that British era when he shot it at, like, whatever that.
Yeah, before Rebecca
yeah. And Rebecca is another one that I'm trying. You can't even see Rebecca now. They did a remake of it.
Yeah,
which is pretty watchable.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, but I
have it on DVD if you want to borrow.
Oh, you do? Yeah, yeah.
I still have all
I
the
should borrow
physical
the DVD.
Yeah, I still have the physical media. That's
but,
his first American movie.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, but when he came over here.
Yeah, probably David Selznick, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Notorious.
Yeah.
Claude Rains.
Yeah.
So we'll get him in there.
Who we had in Casablanca.
Yeah.
Ingrid, who we had in Casablanca.
Yeah. And Cary Grant.
Yeah.
So stylish, so excellent. A great thriller. Great with Claude Rains. He's got the mother. The overbearing mother. She's the evil one in it. Hitchcock always had that. There was always this kind of crazy female at the head of everything.
Yeah. It's the penultimate of Psycho, where she's it's like she's living up in the
But Ingrid Bergman at her absolute most irresistible. And Cary Grant, the perfect. And
he's a spy. I forget.
Well,
it's always like this MacGuffin, which is a term Hitchcock invented to just further the plot, whatever it is. And it was that Cary.
She's a radical. Like, her father was a commie, like from South America.
Yeah.
So, and it's based on a real woman who was brought in by the State Department. So she is, she has a notorious father and a notorious past. But she's kind of just now living the high life in Miami or something, whatever. And then the State Department brings her in to romance Claude Rains, who's involved in all sorts of international
Nazi
espionage
or something, like maybe.
And they feed her the woman. What do you call a woman who goes in as lure, as bait? But they force her to essentially marry Claude Rains. Now she falls in love with Cary Grant, and now he doesn't. He feels uncomfortable about the assignment now because he's basically.
Well, Cary Grant's like Bond, right? But he's an agent in.
He's an agent.
He's because I think Ian Fleming wrote Bond to be Cary Grant. But then by the time they did Dr. No, Cary Grant might have been a little too old.
Right.
But if you think of the proto James Bond, it was Cary Grant.
It's like a James Bond character, and he now gets involved with Ingrid, and he's insecure about this assignment now because he's pimping her out to this evil man. But
there's a whole sequence in the basement with the champagne bottle and all that.
Yes.
It's the suspense Hitchcock creates.
So he goes back in essentially without ruining the plot, because you're not going to remember it anyway because it's so confusing. But he goes in and he has to get her out of the situation that he got her into it.
Yeah,
and he's quite cold in the movie. There's a great line: "Dry your eyes, baby. It's out of character." Like he treats her like kind of a slut, and she is so hurt by that, but he does it as a defense mechanism because he's falling in love with her, and he knows he's the one forcing her to be a slut.
It's hard. It's the old thinking, like, this is going to make you tougher, baby.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. You think about like the actors that Hitchcock would work with, like Jimmy Stewart again and again, Cary Grant, Peter Lorre, these people he would do multiple pictures with or movies with, or Bernard Herrmann. Some of these scores are amazing scores, and it's just I know people nowadays talk about him, and people like, is he as good as he purports to be, or was he an a-hole because of how he treated women and stuff? But it's just, if you look at the stuff he was doing back then, Hitchcock, he had such a amazing understanding of just storytelling, shot composition, music, what'll get people. He's the guy who told the old story, like, to cause suspense. Me and Tom could be sitting here at a cafe talking, and then it blows up and people are like, oh, it's a surprise. He's like, if you do that again, you show the bomb under the table and you show them the bomb's about to go off. And then we're talking about baseball. People are going to be like, that's the suspense. Get out of there. Get out of there. He's like, but you can never have the bomb go off.
Yeah.
Because if you have the bomb go off, you do something that you betray the audience or something.
Well, where's the one? Strangers on a Train?
Yes.
Is that the one that there's actually a tick-tocking, or is that?
No, that might be 39 Steps.
Yeah,
or
that's it.
Strangers on the Train is like, you do my murder, I'll do yours.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to now. We each did 2. Your third one.
This was hard because I was trying to think of a comedy. I would honorable mention. Since you did one, I would do Arsenic and Old Lace as an honorable mention.
Oh, yeah.
Frank Capra, I love. I live in a Frank Capra world in my head, and it has Peter Lorre, it has Cary Grant, and it's a screwball comedy. And it's absolutely amazing.
For people who think of Cary Grant as only a suave, debonair James Bond type,
it's almost slapstick.
It's total slapstick,
and it's a stage play, and it's so good that they made it into a movie. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, everybody's fantastic in it, and it takes place in a Halloween night in Brooklyn. Fantastic movie, great Halloween movie to watch, great comedy, but
so funny.
I would say, going into the color realm, a Left Turn, Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
Oh wow!
Because we just passed St. Patrick's Day, and I grew up loving. Everyone loves Disney, and a lot of people only remember animated Disney, and I'm a big fan of live action Disney back when Disney was alive, not like the remakes we see nowadays. And I'm a huge fan of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And going back to growing up when I was little, Disney had all these live action movies coming out in the 60s and 70s. So I was a video store kid. So my parents would get me videos, and I watched like The Black Hole or That Darn Cat. Mary Poppins.
That was Disney.
Yeah,
Black Hole.
He had a huge output, and he was very, very, he put like the studio up for sale, or he put when they were making Disney. It's a Land or World. Which one is in California?
Disneyland is California.
They were building that, and he had to put that up as collateral because shooting was going bad with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. That was the first live action movie, so it's like he knew what he was doing. They became smash hits. So we get to like 58 or 59, talking about Sean Connery. We have a movie, Darby O'Gill and Little People, and it's about leprechauns in Ireland. And
what year did that come out?
I think it's like 58 or 59.
Yeah.
And that's one of Sean Connery's first movies. And that's the movie that they saw and he got James Bond for, because Dr. No is 1960.
Yeah.
And I forget her name. Janet Moreau maybe is the actress in it. She was in a couple Disney movies, and she died in like the late 60s of a illness, maybe like something quick. Appendicitis.
Is it Jean Moreau?
I think it's Janet.
Jean Moreau or Janet?
Yeah, maybe Jean
Moreau.
I'm saying it. I'm sorry. I'm saying it wrong, or I'm misremembering. But it's a movie that if you watch nowadays still holds up for the special effects, because they use this technique called forced perspective, which they've now used on all the Lord of the Rings movies and stuff where they can do. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you put someone near the camera and you put the other person farther away, and you line it up, it looks like that they're talking to each other.
And they did that back then with the little people.
Yeah. So instead of just making someone small and putting them in the frame, and having the special effects look bad, what they did was they created these sets where I would be in the foreground looking like this, and Tom would be like 50 yards this way and looking up at me. If you match the eye line, it looks like we're talking to each other. Yeah. And then you just make the sets seamlessly. Then it looks like
unbelievable. It's unbelievable that it works, especially when you see the Lord of the Rings, because they shot it all.
That's how they did it.
On the extras, you can see how, when Gandalf was with little Frodo in the horse and buggy, the horse and buggy is like 35 feet long.
Yeah.
And
but it's perfect because of the eye, because the camera eye is only to do it.
Who thought of that? Was it somebody?
I think it was movie? It might have been the cinematographer. That's a good question. Robert Stevenson, I think, directed it, who ended up doing a lot of Disney movies in the 60s, Mary Poppins and stuff. And Peter Ellen Shaw did the matte paintings. Who's a very legendary matte painter. I don't know who, but it's the forced perspective. It's something that it's beautiful because it still holds up. Yeah. So that's why the movie is so not forgiving, but it's so good, because it's the soundtrack is great because it's a semi-musical. Sean Connery singing the scene. Yep. You have the Banshee comes down. You have the Coach of Death coming at the end, very Ireland. And the other thing too at the time was during television, Walt Disney had his TV show. He thanks the leprechauns at the end. So he's just telling you, we had leprechauns. We had to go talk to King Bryant, the king of the leprechauns in Ireland. Pat O'Brien brings him over, and he has him come over. So it's to him, it's like, no, there was no special effects. We actually had leprechauns in it. Yeah. Pat O'Brien, a great actor that all our parents knew. Angels with Dirty Faces. Angels with Dirty Faces. And he was the classic. I think if you said today, name an old actor who used to play a priest,
they would say Bing Crosby,
Yeah.
you know, because they would think of Bells of St. Mary's or something like that. But Pat O'Brien was always playing a priest.
Angels Faces. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the
Yeah.
The typical Irish, stereotypical Irish guy.
Yeah, and a great actor. And again,
fantastic.
like, you know, just one of those great, you know, just he was always really good, and most people don't know who he is now.
Yeah. What's your now? You have
okay, number 3. This is the essential, and maybe it could be the first one that you watch. And I didn't mean to do this. That's why I looked up when I looked up Billy Wilder. I said, "Oh, I can't have 2 Billy Wilder movies, but I can have 2 Billy Wilder movies." The Apartment.
Wow.
The Apartment
Fred
is one
McMurray again.
Yeah. And I mean, amazing. You know, the Fred McMurray that we grew up on My Three Sons, he played such a good bad guy.
Yeah.
But there's so many movies where Fred McMurray is a wonderful, understanding good guy, and he's such an evil bad guy. He's so perfect in all of those roles, and he is at his most evil in The Apartment. But The Apartment is so good, I can't even take it. Like, my head explodes every time I watch it. It's so perfect, and it's quite dark. I mean,
it is actually.
It's. I mean, I guess it qualifies as a comedy because it's
like the guise of a comedy, but then you realize the plot of the context is very.
Yeah,
it's a sad. For people who don't know, it's basically what Jack Lemmon is. He works in an advertising firm, or what is it?
It's kind of. I mean, I don't even know if it's an advertising firm or an accounting firm or whatever, but it might as
well
be.
It's a New York firm.
It's a New York firm,
like Mad Men, kind of.
Yeah. And he's living in an apartment, I think, on the Upper West Side, I think, and the executives, in order to rise up through the company, he ends up letting executives that are above him use his apartment for assignations.
Yeah.
After dark. And so
he's extramarital affairs because they live up in Connecticut, say, or somewhere.
Yeah.
So if they have to stay late for work, they can use the apartment as a bungalow.
Yeah.
And then they can go back home to wherever they live in Westport or wherever. Yeah. And then the wives don't know. And then Jack's letting him use his very cozy and
we won't even blow the plot, but you can imagine what happens.
Shirley MacLaine's in it too.
Shirley MacLaine at her Shirley MacLaine at her most delightfully scrumptious. She's like so hopelessly attractive in this movie. It's unbelievable.
For Sister Sarah, I love her. So but that's the dark. Yeah, see, now
it's very dark.
We've gone through like the zeitgeist of. We started in the like late 30s or 40s, and then we've gone and now we've hit the 50s with Night of the Hunters 55.
Yeah.
Darby's 58, 59, and now The Apartment's what, 1960?
I think 1960. Yeah.
So we're getting into like the darker side of the and then that's another. Fred McMurray did like 4 or 5 movies with Barbara Stanwyck. So there's the one I brought up before, Remember the Night, which is a Christmas movie they did together, which is great.
And was that with the train, the toy train or something?
No, that's
the robot.
Affair. That's Holiday Affair. That's with Mitchum and Janet Leigh.
Oh no, there's one where I think it's Fred McMurray, and like he's like a robot designer, and then at the end of the movie, the robot walks off the end of the table to its death.
Yeah, geez, no, I don't know.
It's like a domestic infidelity, and then
Remember the Nights where he's like he works at the law office in New York, and Barbara Stanwyck's arrested, and he just wanted to spend the weekend at Christmas time in jail. So he bonds her out, takes her home with her to like Ohio, and she's real rough and tumble, but they have to have the car ride home, and then she meets his family at the farm. Sterling Holloway, who is the voice of Winnie the Pooh, sings a song in it.
I knew we would. I said 3 movies, but I knew we'd each have more than 3.
And then Fred McMurray is kind of a weird character because a friend of mine got into My Three Sons and was really doing a deep dive, watching it all on YouTube or whatever, and he read a book about it. And Fred McMurray would do weird stuff. Like at that time, he had such clout, he would come in and insist they do all his stuff at once. So you'd have to do 3 months of just his close-ups, all his stuff.
Yes.
And then he would leave. And then you'd have to take another 3 months to turn everything around and make sure the kids were they'd have to shoot all the reverses.
And it's funny because
and then
knowing that when you watch it, it's very awkward, and you can see how
he's
awkward
a stand-in.
Because
him there.
Well, Chip, and he would just say something, and then they would cut to the kid. And it's like, sure, Dad, and it's like there was an awkward.
There was never a 2 shot because Fred McMurray was like, I want to get my stuff done and go do the Shaggy Dog at Disney. He was doing a lot of movies, and he knew what he wanted, and they were like, sure, okay.
Yeah, and Uncle, what's the name of that guy? William Devane. No, William. The Uncle Charlie in My Three Sons.
I forget his darn name. I was gonna say Robert Young, but that's Father Knows Best or Marcus Welby.
It's William something, and he's in a lot of the Preston Sturges movies.
Yeah.
And I would have thrown Preston Sturges in it, but that's advanced. Preston Sturges is so wacky. And, the Lady Eve with Henry Fonda and Barbara Stanwyck.
Yeah.
It's so wacky. It's almost like an advanced degree.
It's like jazz. You can't just get into jazz and start listening to like, crazy fusion Miles Davis. You have to start kind of with big band and work your way up so that you can kind of get the process,
Which is, let me ask you, because I think The Apartment is immediately accessible to people.
Yeah.
And I think it's so classic. And because of its
and
darkness,
semi-modern, too,
yes, very modern.
Yeah.
Because of its, I would almost recommend The Apartment to a teenager, like a 17-year-old, because because of its
content and its
moral heft.
Yeah.
And with the hookup culture and everything like that, that there was such hookup culture in the 50s and 60s, but it was just down below the surface, And
it boiled over into the late 60s with the sexual revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely a movie that I think young people would like, because if they just sit them down and tell them to be quiet and watch it, they'll get right into it, because it's another one of these plots that could be instantly transitioned or transcended into this culture.
Yeah.
And I can clearly see somebody remaking that now with some modern audiences. And
although that's a movie that who would dare?
Well, I'm sure anybody would if you give them the idea.
Yeah. But say I were a successful filmmaker, I wouldn't touch The Apartment because it's so perfect. Yeah, but
people don't care nowadays. That's what really upsets me. They'll have movie. Spielberg's amazing, but he redid West Side Story. You think anything is untouchable? They've redone it because if there's a money grab or somebody wants to do it,
he's good enough to do it.
Yeah, a guy like Spielberg, it's a caveat.
And it was so good. I think his version of West Side Story was so good that it just stands apart. You're never the original is so perfect.
He had the clout and money to be able to do how he wanted it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, that's another conversation. But there's only 2 or 3 directors like a Christopher Nolan, a Quentin Tarantino, or a Spielberg who can say, "I want to do X, Y, and Z," and be able to get away with what people used to be able to do. Because nowadays, these superhero movies aren't done by a director. Someone may direct it, but it's a conglomerate. It's an executive team. It's too many chefs in the kitchen.
I think we went past your drop dead. What do you want? It's like 11. It's already 11:16.
Oh, we can start wrapping up.
I know we wanted to wrap him at 11:15 because you got to get into Fox News.
Yeah,
right?
I got to go get on a train. Okay. I got to meet a stranger on a train.
That's great. Well,
look, thank you for
we got our 3
house.
essentials.
Yeah,
we had put the title back up there. Dion, Baia, 3. What were your 3? Let's review them again.
Oh gosh, I've forgotten already. I had my honorable mention was Arsenic and Old Lace, and then we did White Heat. And then I did Night of the Hunter, very dark movies. And then I ended it with a happy-go-lucky Darby O'Gill and Little People.
That's
Walt
right.
Disney. And your 3 were honorable mention was Casablanca.
Yeah, Casablanca is not even honorable mention. It's just understood.
Yes.
It's greatness understood. And then we had in no particular order.
Double Indemnity.
Double Indemnity, Notorious, and The Apartment.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some viewing right there.
That's a good project. Those 6 movies, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
I envy all you people that are going to watch those 6 movies
for the first time and not like, wow. And if they have the open mindedness just to watch and especially if you're open, if you're not being forced, if you're like, yeah, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's almost like, I don't know, your first drink of I don't know. You can equate it to whatever you want.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I like watching old movies. Is to round it out to the beginning. It's seeing an old movie that you haven't seen coming up or whatever on TV or whatever. And you're like, oh, I never heard of this. That's like, oh my gosh, there's a movie that I hadn't seen with Fred McMurray and Janet Leigh or whoever the hell else. It's amazing. That you get that kind of passion.
The other morning when I was setting up the equipment here to do a podcast, I popped the TV on and I often just put on TCM in the afternoon. And it was the Anatomy of a Murder, Otto Preminger.
I love George C. Scott in that movie is incredible.
Great.
Incredible. And Duke Ellington's score, maybe. I think he's in it as well. And Jimmy Stewart's the lead. And maybe Lee Remick.
Lee Remick as
and crazy Ben Gazzara, maybe.
Ben Gazzara.
yeah.
As he's the one who's on trial.
But I tell you, George C. Scott shines in that movie. He's the prosecutor at the end when he's getting beat. George C. Scott comes in as the prosecutor and he's grilling Lee Remick on the stand, and he's purposely putting himself between Lee Remick and Jimmy Stewart, who's her lawyer, so she can't make eye contact.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
And the camera, you see it happening. It's so George C. Scott of the era of The Hustler. So George C. Scott's just incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
But that's not entry level though. It's so slow moving that's one of those movies that's just going to catch you off guard one day. So keep that in the pocket. All right, Dion, Baia, thanks for being here. We'll do it again. Me over, hopefully we can make it. I mean, you do this all the time. Name your podcast again.
Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers, audio podcast. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, we talk about stuff like this all the time. All the old movies that we used to grow up with, watch, and the collective love. And we don't ever crap on the movie. We always talk about they may not be
find the good in it.
Yeah, we every movie is somebody's favorite movie.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to end the recording. See you there.